Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into a seriously chilling account. We're talking about an isolated mountain town, a pretty bizarre local fixture, and a frankly terrifying, unexplained discovery deep in the woods. You know, what starts out as a simple quest for a quiet, slow-paced life, it quickly unravels into a full-blown psychological thriller. We're going to map exactly how this whole thing unfolded, piece by piece. Just imagine hearing this exact phrase shouted in what you thought was a totally empty forest. Picture the sheer panic hitting you when you realize you are absolutely not alone, right before a seemingly harmless local guy charges at you with pure rage. This quote, it's the absolute turning point of our story today. It yanks us straight from a peaceful hike right into a nightmare. But to really grasp how shocking this moment was, we gotta look at the setting first.
So let's get into Section 1, the mountain town anomaly and the illusion of safety.
This entire story is really all about that illusion of safety and how isolation can kind of hide things right in plain sight. Our narrator had just moved away from a busy city to a small, remote mountain town, looking for some peace and quiet. We're talking a tiny place with just a few businesses. You know, a gas station, a grocery store, a little police station. The kind of place where everybody knows everybody. But right in the middle of this cozy, friendly community was a massive anomaly, a guy named Hector. Hector was literally the exact opposite of his environment. Where the town was predictable, Hector was a total wild card. I mean, think about these details. He was short, heavily built, and he wore the exact same dirty clothes every single day. But honestly, the most jarring thing about him was how he moved. He didn't walk. He wandered around town, day and night, by skipping. Yeah, skipping. Plus, nobody actually knew where the guy lived. Yet despite all these massive red flags, the locals swore up and down he was totally harmless. It was like this giant collective blind spot, right? A whole community just choosing to normalize the abnormal, probably because it was just easier than questioning it.
Moving on to Section 2, Voices in the Woods and the Encounter.
Well, that whole perception of safety, it shattered completely during the narrator's weekend hike out into a super remote part of the forest. A few hours into the hike, the narrator starts hearing voices off in the distance. At first, it sounded like a group of people having a really intense argument. One voice was super aggressive and threatening, while another sounded terrified, literally begging for forgiveness. Driven by curiosity, the narrator tracks the sound. But as they reach the clearing, the horrific reality kicks in. There was no group. It was just one single person standing there. It was Hector. He was talking to himself, sure, but the voices sounded completely different. It was almost like several distinct people were trapped inside his one body. So the narrator is hiding behind a tree, totally paralyzed, just watching this incredibly disturbing scene play out. And then, out of nowhere, one of Hector's shifting voices shouts out their exact location. He's hiding behind the tree. Just imagine that. The narrator's blood must have instantly run cold. The element of surprise was completely gone, and in that split second, the observer literally became the prey. In a flash, Hector turns, locks eyes with the narrator, and his face just twists with pure rage. And then, he charges. The narrator takes off sprinting through the dense forest as fast as humanly possible, with Hector right on their heels, screaming that they would never leave those woods alive. For what felt like an absolute eternity, the terrifying sound of a heavy guy crashing through the trees was right behind them. But then, it just stopped. As quickly and inexplicably as the chase began, it ended. Dead silence. The narrator didn't look back, just pushed forward, finally making it to safety and driving straight to that tiny local police station we talked about earlier.
Which brings us to Section 3, the cold case connection and the sheriff's revelation.
Once they were safely at the station, the narrator desperately pours out the whole terrifying story. But the sheriff doesn't just take down a simple statement. Instead, she starts piecing together a seriously chilling timeline. When she hears the exact location of the attack, she looks visibly disturbed. Why? Well, she reveals that years earlier, human remains had been found in that exact same patch of forest, a case that, by the way, was never solved. And the timeline gets even darker from there. The sheriff realizes that Hector, this supposedly harmless skipping guy with no address, first showed up in their town right around the exact same time those remains were discovered. Fast forward to the present, and a violent attack kicks off in that very same spot.
Let's look at Section 4, Secrets of the Forest and the Disappearance. Armed with all this horrific context and a very real potential link to an unsolved crime, the narrator and the sheriff head back to the site of the attack the very next day. They're ready to investigate, ready to confront Hector. But the investigation, it yielded absolutely nothing. When they got back to that clearing deep in the woods, Hector was just gone. No footprints, no hidden campsite, zero evidence of a struggle or of anyone living out there. Just nothing at all. And from that day forward, nobody in the town ever saw Hector again. It was as if he just vanished right into the very wilderness that seemed to be hiding his darkest secrets.
So that leaves us with the aftermath. Even now, years down the road, the narrator still actually hikes those mountain forests. But you know, the whole experience fundamentally changed their relationship with the woods. Now every single snapped branch or rustle of leaves brings back the memory of Hector's raging eyes. It's a terrifying realization of how a guy everyone assumed was totally harmless could just transform into a monster once isolated in the trees. We're left with these massive, lingering unknowns. Nobody knows who Hector actually was. Nobody knows where he came from before he showed up in town. And crucially, we still don't know for sure what his true connection was to the human remains from that cold case.
It really leaves us with this final chilling question to consider. We dig into explainer topics like this to try and make sense of the anomalies around us, right? To put the puzzle pieces together. But when a community's illusion of safety masks a literal predator, and when the wilderness so easily swallows the evidence completely whole, are some secrets simply meant to stay buried deep in the forest? It's a stark reminder that the unknown is sometimes way closer than we think, lurking right on the edges of our quietest towns. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep your eyes open out there.